So when you say you've got like all this telemetry going from your house, or you've got the telemetry in your house, are you doing like, is everything in your house like powered by YAML? Like, is this all being calculated locally in Home Assistant in YAML, or are you offshooting all the states somewhere else and then calculating, all right, yes, this is an anomaly here, don't do that automation now? Like, how is all that data like being processed?
Yeah, so I'm doing everything through Home Assistant first and foremost, because I want kind of going into that chaos engineering mindset of, I assume the internet will fail. Well, I assume the internet will fail. I want to be able to do most, if not all, functions locally if the internet goes out. We've got tons of trees here. Like, we do have internet outages constantly. Like, behind a Starlink is the next thing on my list for that added resiliency. But so I want everything to be local, but there's also a lot of telemetry I have in the cloud based on living a normal life away from home. So I want to kind of be able to do that correlation. And so I end up doing I think they rebranded it now, but it was like the Azure IoT Hub. You can actually pass the telemetry through there. So I create a copy of all my telemetry and push it up to the cloud. And then I'm able to overlay that on top of other telemetry I have, like sign-in logs for Azure AD and like all of those other things, and start to play with the data. It's also how I've been able to learn some of these more powerful cloud type analytics as well. Like I use it's easier to learn when it's your own telemetry that you know what's going on. So if I'm trying to say, hey, I want to learn Kusto query language with Sentinel, for example, I learned that by asking it, how many times has my door opened today? I know how many times my door is open because I have it in Home Assistant. I know what that telemetry looks like. But now that I've pushed that telemetry up to the cloud, I can learn how to write that query. And so it's been a lot of how I've learned these other enterprise things, because I take my home telemetry and push it up there. And there are a few things where I do have like Sentinel creating and triggering something that'll actually happen on Home Assistant. So that's where the webhooks come in handy, and say I can have Sentinel push something. So there are various, like, actually if my Defender stance in the cloud, so my EDR and all of that stuff with my Microsoft Defender telemetry, if I see that activity there and I have a certain risk score, certain alert that happens, I actually have that. So there's an automation in Sentinel that uses the webhook that tells Home Assistant that there's likely adversarial activity happening, which then triggers my DNS to take a different posture. So I end up in this place where the cloud actually is telling my home to harden its posture through my DNS to say, go to this new profile because we think that there might be a possible attack on you or your family in your cyber estate. And so that's where I've been playing with it a lot more. Is, a lot of people with Home Assistant, they're anti-cloud, and there's a lot of reason for that. I mean, just looking at the garage door fund lately, right? So I think it's dependency on SaaS providers that are unpredictable, but there's a lot of power in the cloud, especially when you start looking at IaaS and the ability to custom do stuff. I like using the power of the cloud with the home, but I don't assume the cloud will be there. I assume it will be failed. I assume the cloud will disappear. And as long as you go in with that mindset, I think you end up with a very resilient infrastructure that you get the best of both worlds. I get everything local, but there's a lot of processing I can do in the cloud that I can't do on-prem. Even if I had $5 million stack, right? I can't reproduce the power of Azure. So I still try to do stuff up there. So kind of just see what happens,
I think the anti-cloud piece is also around like services, right? Not like it's also like, hey, this thing that I bought has a reliance on cloud. I think it's a little different when you're building your own thing in the cloud too, right? Like, again, whatever service that might be, and not to say that tomorrow Microsoft won't sunset Defender or whatever that is, right? But at least there's some reliance on that provider, but depending on who that provider is and what they are, there could be a level of trust, right? Whereas, you have Chamberlain for MyQ, for example, or that's that whole MyQ system, or Logitech, right? That just starts saying, hey, you know what? We're going to start bricking devices, or we're going to start doing whatever, right? So I think there's a little bit of a difference there, right? When you build your own services, just not in your house, right? And slight piece there, but